She was 8 months pregnant with twins when she discovered the truth. Her husband, a millionaire CEO, had been sleeping with his 28-year-old marketing director for 18 months. He had moved his mistress into their Hampton Beach house. He had redecorated the nursery she designed for their babies and turned it into a home gym for his lover. But that was not the worst part. The worst part was the $12 million, her inheritance, the money her dying father left her. Her husband had stolen every penny of it to build his $200 million empire, and he had tricked her into signing away her rights before they even said "I do." When she tried to fight back, he used her own therapy sessions against her. He called her crazy. He threatened to have her committed to a psychiatric facility the moment she gave birth. He was going to take her babies and leave her with nothing. He thought he had won. He thought she was weak because she was kind. He thought she was stupid because she trusted him. He thought she would never fight back. He was wrong. What happens next will remind you that the most dangerous person in any room is the one everyone underestimates. This story carries a powerful message for anyone who has ever felt trapped, manipulated, or powerless in a relationship. It proves that your kindness is not weakness. Your silence is not surrender. And sometimes, the person who seems to have lost everything is actually the one holding all the cards. If you have ever wondered whether starting over is possible, this story is your answer. Drop a comment below and share your experience. Your story might help someone else who is going through the same thing right now. And if this channel has ever made you feel seen, understood, or inspired, please take a moment to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. Every like, every share, every comment helps us reach more people who need to hear these stories. Now, let us begin. The pen moved across the paper with a certainty that had taken 6 months to build. A woman's hand, adorned with a 4-carat diamond ring that caught the afternoon light streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows, signed her name with deliberate precision. Claire Elizabeth Morrison. Each letter formed with the kind of resolve that only comes after a person has been broken completely and rebuilt themselves from the fragments. The lawyer sitting across the mahogany desk watched her with a mixture of professional detachment and something that looked almost like admiration. He had seen thousands of women sit in that same chair over his 30-year career. Most of them trembled. Most of them hesitated. Most of them asked if there was another way. This woman did none of those things. Patricia Wells cleared her throat. "Mrs. Morrison, are you certain? Once this is filed, there is no going back." Claire looked up from the document. Her eyes, which had spent the better part of 7 years clouded with self-doubt and carefully cultivated confusion, were now clear as polished glass. "I have never been more certain of anything in my life." The pen finished its work. Claire slid the document across the table with fingers that did not shake, did not hesitate, did not betray even a whisper of the fear that had once consumed her every waking moment. Patricia nodded slowly, gathering the papers into a manila folder that would soon destroy a $200 million empire. Then it begins. By this time Friday, your husband will receive these papers, and by this time next month, he will have nothing. Claire stood, smoothing the front of her simple black dress over the swell of her pregnant belly. She was 8 months along now, carrying twins who kicked and turned inside her as if they too were eager for what came next. "He already has nothing," she said quietly. "He just does not know it yet." She turned toward the window, looking out at the Manhattan skyline that had been her prison for 7 years. Somewhere out there, in a corner office on the 45th floor of a gleaming tower, her husband was pouring champagne with his mistress. celebrating another successful quarter, completely unaware that his entire world was about to collapse. But we are getting ahead of ourselves. To understand how Claire Morrison became the woman who would bring down one of New York's most powerful men, we need to go back to a time when she still believed in the institution of marriage, back to when she thought love would be enough, back to the moment when the first crack appeared in her gilded cage, 6 months earlier. The penthouse occupied the entire top floor of one of Park Avenue's most prestigious buildings. $28 million worth of real estate spread across 6,000 square feet of marble floors, custom millwork, and floor-to-ceiling windows that offered an unobstructed view of Central Park. Claire Morrison moved through this luxury like a ghost haunting the halls of her own life. At 35 years old, she had everything a woman was supposed to want: a successful husband, a home that belonged in the pages of Architectural Digest, closets full of designer clothes she rarely wore, a wine cellar stocked with bottles worth more than most people's annual salaries. And yet, she paused in front of the nursery, her hand resting on the doorframe as she looked at the room that had been meticulously prepared for the twins she carried. Soft yellow walls, custom Italian cribs positioned side by side, hand-painted murals of hot air balloons floating through cotton candy clouds. Everything was perfect. Everything was empty. The sound of footsteps behind her made Claire turn. Her husband Garrett strode down the hallway, already dressed in his custom-tailored suit, despite the early hour, his attention focused entirely on the phone pressed to his ear. "Yes, I understand. Push the meeting to Thursday." "No, I do not care what Davidson thinks. He works for us, not the other way around." He ended the call without saying goodbye, already moving past Claire toward the master bedroom. "Board meeting in Philly," he said over his shoulder. "Taking the jet. Back tomorrow night." Claire followed him into their bedroom, watching as he grabbed his overnight bag from the closet. It was already packed. He had not mentioned any trip last night. "I have the ultrasound today," she said. "The doctor wants to discuss the positioning. She is concerned about whether I can deliver naturally or if we need to consider a cesarean." Garrett paused just long enough to press a perfunctory kiss to her forehead. His lips were dry, distracted. "Send me photos. Gotta run." And then he was gone. The door to the penthouse clicked shut behind him, leaving Claire standing alone in 6,000 square feet of the finest real estate money could buy. She had never felt more worthless in her entire life. That evening, Claire found herself doing something she had done 1,000 times before: sorting through the laundry. It was one of the few domestic tasks she still insisted on handling herself, despite Garrett's repeated suggestions that they hire additional staff. "I like doing it," she had told him once, early in their marriage. "It makes me feel useful." He had laughed at that. Indulgent, condescending. "Whatever makes you happy, sweetheart." Now, 7 years later, she understood that nothing she did would ever make her feel useful in his eyes. She was not a partner. She was not even really a wife. She was a possession. A decorative object that had served its purpose and was now being stored until disposal became convenient. She reached into Garrett's gym bag to remove his workout clothes, and her fingers brushed against something hard and rectangular. A phone, but not his phone. His phone was the latest model, always encased in a sleek black cover with the Morrison Holdings logo embossed in silver. This phone was different. Cheaper, the kind of disposable device you might pick up at any convenience store. Claire stared at it for a long moment. "It is a work phone," she told herself. "For security reasons, executives have those all the time." She put it back in the bag, finished sorting the laundry, went through the motions of her evening routine with mechanical precision. But she could not sleep that night. At 2 in the morning, Claire found herself sitting at the computer in Garrett's home office, her heart pounding so loudly She was certain it would wake the entire building. She knew his password. He had never bothered to hide it from her, never bothered to change it, because why would he? Claire was his wife. Claire was harmless. Claire would never think to check. His email inbox showed nothing out of the ordinary. Business correspondence, meeting requests, the usual flow of communication that accompanied running a $200 million real estate empire. Then she checked the deleted folder. The email had been sent 3 days ago. A booking confirmation from the Ritz-Carlton in Philadelphia. A suite, not a standard room, for one night. Claire read it 3 times, trying to make sense of what she was seeing. But the board meeting is at the Philadelphia office, she whispered to the empty room. There is a corporate apartment there. Why would he need a hotel suite? There is an explanation, she told herself. There is always an explanation. Stop being paranoid. But the seed had been planted, and some seeds, once they take root, cannot be ignored, no matter how desperately we might try. The next morning, Claire went to her ultrasound alone. The doctor pointed out the positioning of the twins on the monitor, explaining the concerns about natural delivery, discussing the options available to them. Claire nodded in all the right places, asked the appropriate questions, pretended to be fully present in this moment that should have been filled with joy and anticipation. But her mind was elsewhere. Her mind was in a hotel suite in Philadelphia, imagining scenarios she desperately wanted to be wrong about. She sent the photos to Garrett as he had requested. He responded with a thumbs-up emoji and nothing else. That night, Claire began paying attention to things she had previously ignored. The receipts in his wallet for jewelry she had never received. The restaurant charges for 2 on nights when he claimed to be working late. The way he angled his body away from her when his phone buzzed with messages. The increasing frequency of those business trips that always seemed to coincide with beautiful weather weekends. She told herself she was being paranoid. She told herself she was letting pregnancy hormones cloud her judgment. She told herself that 7 years of marriage meant something, that the vows they had exchanged were sacred, that Garrett would never betray her. But somewhere deep inside, in a place she had spent years learning to silence, Claire Morrison already knew the truth. She just needed proof to believe what her instincts had been screaming all along. 2 weeks later, Claire sat in a cramped office in a part of Brooklyn she had never visited before. The space was nothing like the gleaming corporate environments she had grown accustomed to during her marriage to Garrett. No marble floors here, no floor-to-ceiling windows, just worn carpet, cluttered filing cabinets, and the lingering smell of old coffee. Jerome Washington sat across from her, his weathered hands folded on a desk covered with case files and coffee rings. At 54 years old, he had spent 25 years as a private investigator, and before that another 15 with the FBI's Financial Crimes Unit. He had seen every kind of betrayal the human heart could devise. "Mrs. Morrison," he said, his voice carrying the quiet authority of a man who had learned to deliver hard truths gently. "I will be straight with you. In all my years doing this work, I have never had a wife hire me who was wrong about what she suspected." Claire absorbed this information with a stillness that had become her default state. "What do you mean?" "I mean that women know." Jerome leaned back in his chair, studying her with eyes that had cataloged 1,000 broken marriages. They sense things. They notice patterns. They feel when something has shifted in their relationship. Most of the time, they just need proof to believe what they already know. Claire looked down at her hands, at the 4-carat diamond that had once symbolized forever and now felt like a weight she could not escape. "I need to be sure before I do anything." "What will you do when you are sure?" The question hung in the air between them. Claire considered it carefully, turning it over in her mind like a stone she had found on the beach. "I do not know yet. I just need the truth first." Jerome nodded slowly. Then that is what I will find for you, Mrs. Morrison. The truth, whatever it turns out to be. He handed her a contract, explained his rates, outlined the process he would follow. Claire signed without hesitation, writing a check from the personal account that Garrett had given her for household expenses. It felt appropriate somehow, using his money to uncover his secret. Over the next 3 weeks, Jerome Washington delivered exactly what he had promised: the truth, piece by devastating piece. Week 1 brought photographs. Claire sat in that same cramped office, her hands trembling slightly, as Jerome spread the images across his desk, like a dealer laying out cards. These were taken 4 days ago, he said. A restaurant in Brooklyn Heights, not a business dinner. Claire looked at the photos and felt something inside her crack. Garrett and a younger woman, a beautiful woman with blonde hair and the kind of confident posture that came from knowing exactly how attractive she was. They were sitting close together at an intimate corner table, candles flickering between them. His hand was on the small of her back. He was looking at her in a way Claire had not seen in years, maybe ever. Do you know who she is? Claire heard herself ask, surprised by how steady her voice sounded. Jerome nodded. Tiffany Cole, 28 years old, Director of Marketing at Morrison Holdings. She has been with the company for 3 years. Director of Marketing, Claire repeated. So she works for him. Directly under him, yes. The double meaning of those words was not lost on either of them. Week 2 brought documentation, hotel records, the Ritz-Carlton in Philadelphia, the Four Seasons in Boston, the Plaza right here in New York. Always suites, always midweek, always on nights when Garrett claimed to be traveling for business or working late at the office. Jerome laid out the credit card statements, the booking confirmations, the paper trail of betrayal. The pattern goes back at least 18 months, he said. As far as I can trace. Claire did the math in her head and felt her stomach turn. We have been trying to have children for 3 years, she said slowly. I finally got pregnant through IVF 18 months ago. The implications settled over them like a shroud. He started the affair when we started fertility treatments, Claire continued, her voice barely above a whisper. When I was at my most vulnerable, when I needed him the most. Jerome said nothing. There was nothing to say. Week 3 brought the worst discovery of all. Mrs. Morrison, Jerome said, his tone shifting into something more serious. I need to show you something. These were taken yesterday. He handed her a new set of photographs. The Hamptons house, the 12-bedroom estate in East Hampton that had been under renovation for the past 8 months. She has a key, Jerome said. She stayed the entire weekend. Claire looked at the photos of the house she and Garrett had bought together. The house where she had imagined their children running through the gardens. The house that was supposed to be their family retreat. But something was wrong. The nursery items I ordered, she said slowly. The custom cribs, the murals. Where are they? Jerome reached into his folder and pulled out interior shots. The nursery has been converted into a home gym. Your items are in storage. The master bedroom has been completely redecorated. Claire stared at the photographs of a bedroom she did not recognize. Modern, sleek, black and white with chrome accents, not her taste at all. And there, visible through the open closet door, were women's clothes that did not belong to her. He has moved her into our house, Claire said. It appears so. Claire sat very still for a long moment. Then she asked the question that had been building since the moment she found that second phone in his gym bag. Is there anything else? Jerome hesitated. That hesitation told Claire everything she needed to know. Tell me, she said. Whatever it is, I need to know. Mrs. Morrison, there is something else. I was not looking for it, but I found it while tracing the credit card activity. I have a contact who specializes in forensic accounting. He ran a preliminary check on Morrison Holdings. What did he find? Jerome pulled out another folder, this one thicker than the others. Do you know how your husband originally funded his company? Claire frowned. He had investors, business loans. He came from nothing and built everything himself. That was always the story. Jerome shook his head slowly. The primary investor was not a venture capital firm or a bank. The primary investor was you. That is impossible. My inheritance is in a trust. He could not have accessed it without my knowledge. Jerome opened the folder and spread out a series of documents. 7 years ago, shortly after your wedding, your husband had you sign a series of legal papers. Do you remember what they were? Claire thought back. The early days of their marriage. So much paperwork, prenuptial amendments, tax document. Things Garrett assured her were routine, standard procedure for protecting their assets. He said they were updates to our prenup, joint tax filings, normal married couple things. They were not, Jerome said flatly. What you signed was a transfer of assets. Your $12 million inheritance, the money your father left you, was moved into a holding company that your husband controls entirely. You signed away your ownership without realizing it. The room seemed to tilt slightly. Claire gripped the arms of her chair. Are you telling me he built his entire empire with my father's money? Yes. And I own none of it? Legally speaking, no. Jerome pulled out another document. But it gets worse. The way these papers were structured, if you were to file for divorce right now, your settlement would be based on his personal assets, which he has carefully separated from the company. You would receive maybe $2 million. He would keep the other $198 million. Claire stared at the numbers on the page. $2 million from a $200 million fortune. A fortune built entirely with money that should have been hers. He has been planning for this since the beginning, she said. It appears that way. Or he is simply a man who never leaves anything to chance. Claire gathered the folders, the photographs, the documentation of her husband's betrayal. She placed them carefully in her bag, moving with the deliberate precision of someone walking through a minefield. What will you do? Jerome asked. Claire paused at the door, her hand on the frame. I do not know yet, but I know this much. I am not the woman he thinks I am. Not anymore. She walked out of that cramped office and into the cold March afternoon, carrying proof of her husband's affair, his financial betrayal, and his years-long plan to leave her with nothing. She had the truth now. The question was what she intended to do with it. Claire's first instinct was to do what she had always done. Follow the rules, trust the process, believe that the system would protect her if she simply played by the book. It was the kind of thinking that had been instilled in her since childhood. Her family, the Hartwells of Boston, had built their fortune through 3 generations of careful compliance and proper procedure. They donated to the right charities. They served on the appropriate boards. They believed fundamentally that civilization functioned because people followed the established order. Claire had absorbed these lessons so thoroughly that even now, facing the ruins of her marriage, her first thought was to hire a proper lawyer and file proper papers, and let the courts determine what was fair. She found Richard Blake through a friend of a friend. He came highly recommended. Expensive suit, corner office, the kind of reassuring presence that made wealthy women feel like their problems would be handled discreetly and efficiently. Mrs. Morrison, Blake said after Claire had presented him with Jerome's evidence, I understand this is painful, but I have to be honest with you about your options. Claire sat across from him in one of the one of those deliberately comfortable chairs designed to make clients feel at ease while receiving devastating news. Tell me. Blake spread his hands in a gesture of helpless sympathy. The documents you signed 7 years ago are legally binding. I have reviewed them carefully. Your husband's lawyers structured everything to be airtight. But he deceived me. He stole my inheritance. I understand how it feels that way. Blake's tone was the verbal equivalent of a gentle pat on the head. But proving fraud in these circumstances is extremely difficult. You signed the papers voluntarily. Your husband did not forge your signature. He did not hold a gun to your head. He lied to me about what I was signing. Can you prove that? Blake asked. Do you have recordings of him telling you these were simple tax documents? Witnesses who heard him misrepresent the contents? Emails where he acknowledged the deception? Claire's silence was answer enough. Blake continued, Your husband has a team of lawyers who specialize in exactly this kind of asset protection. Some of the best in the country. If you file for divorce and try to challenge those documents, you will trigger a legal war that could last years. And Mrs. Morrison, I have to be frank with you. You may not survive that war financially. What about the affair? Claire asked. What about the evidence of adultery? New York is a no-fault divorce state. The affair is embarrassing for him, certainly, but it will not significantly impact the financial settlement. Claire felt a cold weight settling in her chest. In custody, I am carrying his children. Blake shifted uncomfortably. Mr. Morrison is a respected businessman with significant resources. If he wants to fight for custody, he has the money to do it indefinitely. He could tie you up in court for years, drain whatever assets you manage to retain. So what do you suggest? Blake leaned forward, his expression the picture of professional concern. My advice? Negotiate quietly. Take what he offers. Do not make waves. Claire stared at him for a long moment. Accept $2 million from a $200 million fortune that was built with my money? Accept whatever custody arrangement he decides is convenient? Walk away quietly and let him win? I know it does not feel fair, Blake said, but sometimes the smart play is knowing when you are outmatched. Claire gathered her documents and stood. Thank you for your time, Mr. Blake. I will consider your advice. But as she walked out of his office, she already knew she would not take it. Claire filed for divorce the following week. She used a different attorney, one who was willing to actually fight. She submitted Jerome's evidence of the affair, the hotel records, the photographs. She included the documentation of the financial deception, the transfer of her inheritance, the deliberately constructed paper wall between her and the money that should have been hers. She believed, in that moment, that the truth would be enough, that the system would see what had been done to her and make it right. 1 week after Claire filed, she received Garrett's response. It arrived via courier, a thick packet of legal documents that landed on her dining room table. With the weight of a death sentence, Garrett had retained not one lawyer, but 4, a team from the most prestigious family law firm in New York. Names that appeared regularly in the society pages, attorneys who had represented some of the wealthiest and most powerful people in the country during their divorces. But the legal firepower was not what made Claire's hands shake as she read through the filing. Garrett was not defending himself. He was attacking her. The motion claimed that Claire was emotionally unstable, a danger to herself and to her unborn children. It requested an immediate psychological evaluation by a court-appointed psychiatrist. Attached to the filing were Claire's own therapy records. For 3 years, she had been seeing a therapist, a kind woman named Dr. Chen, who had helped her work through feelings of inadequacy, of isolation, of being trapped in a life that looked perfect from the outside but felt hollow within. In those sessions, Claire had been honest. She had talked about her anxiety, her depression, her sense that something was wrong in her marriage, even though she could not name exactly what. Now those honest admissions were being used as weapons. "Look at this," Garrett's lawyers wrote. She herself admits to feeling trapped. She has been diagnosed with anxiety disorder. She has discussed suicidal ideation with her therapist. Claire had never discussed suicidal ideation. That was a lie, a deliberate mischaracterization of a session where she had mentioned feeling like she was disappearing, like the person she used to be no longer existed. But the lie was printed on official legal letterhead now. And who would the court believe? A respected businessman with unlimited resources, or an emotionally unstable pregnant woman who had filed for divorce in what his lawyers characterized as an erratic episode? Garrett had also filed for primary custody of the unborn twins. His argument was simple and devastating. Claire's documented psychological issues made her unfit to be a primary caregiver. Her decision to file for divorce while pregnant demonstrated poor judgment and maternal irresponsibility. For the safety of the children, she should remain in the family home under supervision, with Garrett having final authority over all medical decisions. Claire read the filing 3 times, each pass revealing new horrors. He had thought of everything. She could not leave the penthouse without it being characterized as abandoning the family home. She could not access money because he had frozen all joint accounts. She could not even allow herself to cry because he would use it as evidence of her instability. That night, Garrett came home. He walked through the door at 6:15, the same time he always arrived when he was not working late or traveling for business or meeting his mistress at their Hampton house. He hung his coat in the closet, set his briefcase by the door, and found Claire sitting in the living room, the legal documents spread across the coffee table. He did not look angry. He did not look triumphant. He looked almost sad. "Claire," he said, settling into the chair across from her, "I wish you had not done this. I really do. You are sleeping with another woman." Claire's voice was flat. "You stole my inheritance. You have been lying to me for years," Garrett sighed, patient and long-suffering, the way one might respond to a child's tantrum. "I stole your inheritance?" He shook his head slowly. "Claire, I turned $12 million into $200 million. I gave you this life, this penthouse, the cars, the clothes, the lifestyle you have enjoyed for 7 years. Everything you have, I built. With my money. With our money. That is what marriage is? Or was." He leaned forward, his elbows on his knees, his expression shifting to something that might have passed for concern. "Here is what is going to happen," he said. "You are going to drop this divorce filing. You are going to see a psychiatrist I select. You are going to give birth to our children without any more unnecessary stress. And then in a year or two, when things have settled down, we can discuss an amicable separation." Claire stared at him. The man she had married, the man she had trusted with her future, the man who had systematically dismantled every pillar of her independence and was now offering her the chance to remain his possession for a little while longer. "And if I do not?" Garrett's expression did not change, but something cold flickered behind his eyes. "Then I will have you declared unfit before the children are even born. I will have full custody. You will see them on supervised visits twice a month, if I am feeling generous. And you will leave this marriage with nothing." He stood, straightened his jacket. "I do not want to do that, Claire. I really do not, but I will. You know I will." He walked toward the bedroom, then paused at the door. "Oh, and I had your lawyer dropped from the case. Conflict of interest. His firm does work for one of my subsidiaries. Did he mention that?" "No." Such a shame. The bedroom door closed behind him with a soft click. Claire sat alone in the dark, her hands resting on her belly, feeling the twins move inside her. She had trusted the system. The system had crushed her. The weeks that followed were a masterclass in controlled imprisonment. Garrett transformed into the perfect husband. He came home at reasonable hours. He asked about her doctor's appointments. He bought thoughtful gifts, flowers and books, and the organic snacks she craved during her pregnancy. To anyone watching from the outside, and Claire was certain people were watching, he was a devoted partner, standing by his emotionally troubled wife during a difficult time. But Claire knew the truth. Every kind gesture was calculated. Every thoughtful moment was documented. He was building a case, creating a narrative of the long-suffering husband trying desperately to hold his family together while his unstable wife sabotaged their marriage. The divorce filing was frozen. Claire had no lawyer, no money, no way out, but she had not given up. Patricia Wells agreed to meet her at a coffee shop in Carroll Gardens, a quiet neighborhood in Brooklyn far from Garrett's usual orbit. Claire chose the location precisely because it was the kind of place where no one from their social circle would ever venture. Patricia had been Claire's professor at Columbia Law School 15 years ago. She had seen something special in the young Claire Hartwell, had taken her under her wing, had watched with private disappointment when Claire gave up her legal career to become Garrett Morrison's wife. Now, sitting across from her former protege in a corner booth, Patricia saw something else entirely. She saw a woman who had finally woken up. "Claire," Patricia said after reviewing the documents Claire had brought, "your situation is bad. I will not sugarcoat it, but it is not hopeless." Claire leaned forward. "Tell me, the documents you signed 7 years ago can potentially be challenged. The way they were structured, the complexity that obscured their true purpose, all of it suggests deliberate deception. But I need more than suggestion. I need proof that he intended to defraud you from the beginning." "What kind of proof?" "The original documents, the ones he had you sign, they should be in his personal safe or with his attorney. If we can show they were deliberately designed to mislead, that the complexity was intentional misdirection, we have a case for fraud." Claire nodded slowly. "I know where he keeps important documents. There is a safe in his home office. Can you access it?" Claire thought about it. "The combination is his birthday. His arrogance has always been his weakness." That night, while Garrett was working late at the office, or meeting Tiffany at a hotel, or doing whatever it was he did when he claimed to be busy, Claire opened the safe. Her hands trembled slightly as she turned the dial. His birthday. Month, day, year. The lock clicked open on the first try. Inside, she found exactly what she was looking for. The original documents she had signed 7 years ago. Thick packets of legal language that looked intimidating enough to discourage close reading. Email printouts showing Garrett discussing the asset protection strategy with his lawyer months before they were married. Strategy. That was the word he used, as if dismantling her financial independence was simply a chess move in the game of their relationship, and one email that made Claire's blood run cold. "Make sure she does not read past page 1. She trusts you. Use that." Claire photographed everything, every document, every email, every piece of evidence that proved her husband had been planning to steal from her since before they said "I do." She put everything back exactly as she found it, closed the safe, returned to the living room, and sat in the dark, waiting for her heart rate to return to normal. She had the proof now. Everything was going to be different. 2 days later, Garrett came home early. Claire was in the nursery, folding baby clothes, trying to imagine a future where her daughters would grow up in a home filled with love instead of lies. The sound of the front door made her pause. It was only 3 in the afternoon. Garrett never came home before 6 unless something was wrong. She found him standing in the living room, his expression carved from stone. "You opened my safe." The words hit Claire like a physical blow. "What?" Motion-activated camera. Garrett held up his phone, showing her footage of herself photographing documents in his office. I installed it after you filed for divorce. I knew you would try something. Those documents prove you defrauded me. Claire fought to keep her voice steady. They prove you planned to steal my inheritance before we were even married. Garrett laughed. Actually laughed. Those documents prove nothing that will ever see a courtroom, because now, any evidence you try to present will be thrown out. Fruit of the poisonous tree, Claire. Illegally obtained. Inadmissible. Claire stared at him, watching the truth of his words sink in. She had broken into his safe. She had accessed documents she was not authorized to see, and in doing so, she had tainted everything she found. Claire, Garrett said, stepping closer, when are you going to understand? I am always 3 steps ahead. I have been planning this for years. You have been reacting for weeks. It is not a fair fight. It was never going to be a fair fight. He walked past her toward the bedroom. Get some rest. You look tired. The door closed behind him. Claire stood alone in the gathering darkness, realizing that she had just handed her husband the final weapon he needed to destroy her. The next blow came 48 hours later. Claire contacted Jerome Washington in desperation, hoping he might have found something else, some angle she had not considered. Mrs. Morrison, Jerome said, his voice heavy with an emotion she could not quite identify. I cannot help you anymore. What? Why? 2 men visited my office last night. They had badges, FBI credentials, or at least convincing forgeries. They told me that if I continued investigating Garrett Morrison, I would be charged with unlicensed surveillance and harassment. Claire's grip tightened on the phone. He is threatening you. He is not threatening me. Jerome's voice was careful, measured. He is showing me what he can do. There is a difference. These men had photos of me. They knew everywhere I had been, every photograph I had taken. They knew about my family, my wife, my grandchildren. Jerome, I am so sorry. Do not apologize. This is not your fault. But I have to protect my own, Mrs. Morrison. I hope you can understand that. Claire closed her eyes. I understand. There was a long pause on the line. Then Jerome spoke again, his voice dropping to barely above a whisper. I will tell you this much. Men like your husband always have one weakness. It is not their enemies. They expect opposition from enemies. Their weakness is their friends, the people inside their circle who know their secrets. Find someone who has a reason to turn on him. The line went dead. Claire set down the phone and stared at the wall of her gilded prison. Her evidence was useless. Her investigator was neutralized. She was running out of options. And then Garrett struck at her mother. Eleanor Hartwell had served on the board of the Hartwell Foundation for 40 years. The charity that her family had established 3 generations ago, dedicated to providing educational opportunities for underprivileged children in the Boston area. It was her life's work, her legacy. Within 1 week of Claire's failed attempt to gather evidence, anonymous concerns were raised about Eleanor's financial management of the foundation. An audit was demanded. Eleanor was asked to step back from the board, pending investigation. The investigation found nothing wrong. Eleanor's management had been impeccable, but the damage was done. At 68 years old, Eleanor Hartwell was humiliated in front of her peers, her reputation questioned, her life's work tarnished by suspicion. Claire knew immediately who was responsible. Mom, she said when Eleanor called, her voice shaking with fury and grief, I am so sorry. Do not you dare apologize. Eleanor's voice was stronger than Claire expected. This is not your fault. That bastard did this to punish you through me. I never wanted you to get hurt. Claire! Eleanor's tone shifted to something fierce, something Claire had rarely heard from her proper Boston mother. Listen to me. I have spent my whole life playing by the rules, being polite, being proper, doing everything the right way. And look where it got me. What are you saying? I am saying, do not make my mistake. Do not fight fair against a man who has no honor. He does not deserve your integrity. He does not deserve your restraint. He deserves to lose everything, and I want to watch it happen. Claire stood in her prison of a penthouse, 8.5 months pregnant, completely isolated, listening to her mother give her permission to burn everything down. How? She whispered. I have nothing left. Every move I make, he is already there waiting. Then stop moving the way he expects, Eleanor said. Stop being the woman he thinks you are. Become someone else, someone he never saw coming. The lowest point came 3 days later. Claire sat in the nursery, surrounded by tiny clothes and soft blankets and all the carefully chosen items for babies who might be taken from her the moment they were born. She had no evidence she could use, no investigator to help her, no lawyer willing to take her case against Garrett's army of attorneys, no money to fund a fight, even if she found someone willing to wage it. Her mother had been attacked for the crime of being her mother. Her husband had won every round before she even knew the fight had begun. For the first time since this nightmare started, Claire allowed herself to consider the unthinkable. What if she just gave up? What if she accepted whatever scraps Garrett offered, signed whatever papers his lawyers put in front of her, walked away with $2 million and supervised visitation and let him win? She could start over somewhere, a small house in a small town, a quiet life. Maybe he would let her see the girls on holidays, if she was docile enough, compliant enough, if she remembered her place. Claire pressed her hands against her belly, feeling her daughters move. I am sorry, she whispered to them. I tried. I really tried. The doorbell rang. Claire did not move at first. She was not expecting anyone. Garrett was not due home for hours. Visitors were rare these days, since most of their friends had chosen sides, and Garrett's side came with country club memberships and investment opportunities. The bell rang again, more insistent this time. Claire forced herself to stand, to walk through the penthouse, to open the door. Margaret Hoffman stood in the hallway. For a moment, Claire could only stare. Margaret was Garrett's executive assistant, had been for 18 years. She was efficient, professional, and utterly loyal. She handled Garrett's schedule, his correspondence, his life. If there was anyone Claire would have expected to be firmly in her husband's camp, it was Margaret. Mrs. Morrison. Margaret's voice was steady, but her eyes kept darting down the hallway as if she expected someone to appear at any moment. May I come in? I do not have much time. He thinks I am at a doctor's appointment. Claire stepped aside automatically, too surprised to do anything else. Margaret entered the penthouse and immediately moved away from the door, positioning herself where she could not be seen from the hallway. Mrs. Morrison, I have worked for your husband for 18 years. In that time, I have seen him do many things. Some of them I am proud of. Many of them I am not. Claire found her voice. Why are you here? Margaret reached into her purse and pulled out a USB drive. 3 years ago, my husband was diagnosed with cancer. Stage 3. The doctors said there was an experimental treatment that might save his life, but our insurance would not cover it. The cost was over $200,000. Claire remembered suddenly. She had heard about Margaret's husband's illness through office gossip. She had asked Garrett if there was anything they could do to help. I went to Mr. Morrison, Margaret continued. I asked for help. A loan, anything. I had worked for him for 15 years at that point. I thought loyalty meant something. What did he say? He said it was not his problem. He said, I should be grateful I still had a job. Margaret's voice remained steady, but something flickered in her eyes. Something that looked very much like rage, carefully contained. Do you remember what happened next, Mrs. Morrison? Claire thought back. The timeline was hazy, lost in the fog of those early pregnancy months. I found out about your husband, she said slowly. through one of the other wives at a charity event. I asked Garrett about it again, and he said he was handling it. He was not handling it. Margaret's jaw tightened. You were. You arranged for the treatment to be paid for. You covered the entire $200,000 from your personal account. You never told anyone. You never asked for credit or acknowledgement. You just helped. Claire stared at her. I never knew that he did not do it himself. He did not. He never intended to. Margaret stepped closer, her voice dropping. Mrs. Morrison, my husband is in remission now. He has been cancer-free for 2 years. We have grandchildren he would never have met if not for you. And you never even told him. You let him think it was some anonymous benefactor. I did not do it for gratitude. I know. That is exactly why I am here. Margaret held out the USB drive. I have worked for your husband for 18 years. I have seen everything. I know where the bodies are buried. I know about Ms. Cole. I know about the Hamptons house. I know about the documents he had you sign. Claire took the drive, feeling its weight in her palm. So light, so small, so potentially devastating. Why are you telling me this now? Because last week, I overheard him on the phone with his attorney. Margaret's voice dropped even lower. He is planning to have you committed to a psychiatric facility the moment you give birth. He is going to take your children and have you declared permanently unfit. He has doctors lined up to testify. He has a facility selected. The room seemed to tilt slightly. Claire grabbed the back of a chair for support. I will not watch him destroy someone who showed me kindness when he showed me nothing, Margaret said. That drive contains copies of his real financial records, the ones he hides from the accountants, the offshore accounts, the shell companies, and the original email chain where he planned how to steal your inheritance before you were even married. Claire looked at the drive in her hand, then back at Margaret, but I tried to get these documents. He said they are inadmissible. Fruit of the poisonous tree. You obtained them illegally. Margaret's lips curved into something that was almost a smile. I am an employee with authorized access to his files. Everything I copied was within the scope of my job duties. And there are whistleblower protections for employees who report financial crimes. You could lose your job, Claire said. I am retiring next month anyway. Margaret straightened, something fierce coming into her expression. And I want to sleep at night. After 18 years of watching him operate, I want to know that I did one good thing, one thing that mattered. Claire clutched the drive, feeling something she had not felt in weeks. Hope, why should I trust you? She asked. Why should I believe this is not another trap? Margaret met her eyes steadily. Because you looked at me like a person. Every time we met, every event, every office visit. You asked about my family. You remembered my husband's name. You treated me like a human being, not like furniture. She moved toward the door, pausing with her hand on the knob. He never did. In 18 years, he never once asked how I was doing. Never once remembered my birthday or my anniversary. Never once saw me as anything other than a tool for his convenience. Margaret opened the door, checking the hallway before stepping out. Make sure those babies know their mother fought for them, Mrs. Morrison. Show them what it looks like when someone refuses to give up. The door closed behind her. Claire stood alone in the penthouse, the USB drive burning in her hand like a coal. She had one chance, one weapon, and she was going to use it. Patricia Wells spent 3 hours reviewing the contents of the USB drive. When she finally looked up from her laptop, her expression was something Claire had never seen before. Part triumph, part disbelief, part the kind of grim satisfaction that comes from seeing a seemingly impossible puzzle suddenly reveal its solution. Claire, Patricia said, this is everything. Claire leaned forward in her chair. Patricia's office was nothing like Richard Blake's plush corner suite. It was functional, practical, lined with law books and case files. The office of someone who actually did the work instead of just billing for it. What does it prove? Patricia turned the laptop to face Claire. It proves premeditated fraud. These emails date back to 6 months before your wedding. Your husband was already planning the asset protection strategy, already discussing with his lawyers how to structure the documents so you would not understand what you were signing. She scrolled to another email. Look at this one. Make sure she does not read past page 1. She trusts you. Use that. That is not just fraud, Claire. That is deliberate exploitation of a fiduciary relationship. What about the offshore accounts? Patricia pulled up a spreadsheet. $14 million in the Cayman Islands. Another $8 million in Switzerland. He has been skimming from Morrison Holdings for years, hiding assets where you could never find them in a divorce proceeding. So what do we do? Patricia closed the laptop and looked at Claire with an intensity that made her sit up straighter. We do not just file for divorce. We burn it all down. What do you mean? I mean, we need to coordinate. The moment we serve him papers, he will start moving assets, destroying evidence, activating every legal protection he has in place. We need to hit him from multiple directions simultaneously, so fast that he cannot react. Patricia stood and began pacing, her mind clearly racing through possibilities. Step 1. We file new divorce papers. Not like before. This time with full forensic evidence of the fraud, the hidden accounts, all of it. Step 2. We coordinate with a financial firm to freeze his accounts the moment papers are served. I have a contact at a forensic accounting company that specializes in exactly this kind of work. They can petition the court for an emergency freeze order. Will that actually work? Patricia smiled grimly. It will if we have proof of asset concealment. Which we do. What else? Step 3. We make sure the board of Morrison Holdings receives copies of the evidence simultaneously. Garrett is the CEO, but he is not the only owner. There are investors, board members, people who have a fiduciary duty to the company. If they learn their CEO has been committing fraud and they do nothing, they become personally liable. And if they receive the evidence at the same time as him, then they have to act immediately, Patricia said. They cannot claim they did not know. They cannot wait and see. They have to either remove him or become complicit. Claire nodded slowly, feeling the pieces coming together. There is one more thing, she said. What is that? The timing. If we are going to do this, we need to time it perfectly. Maximum impact. Maximum humiliation. Patricia sat back down. When will he be most vulnerable? When will his guard be completely down? Claire thought about it. She had spent 7 years observing her husband's patterns, his rituals, his routines. She knew him better than he thought she did. Friday afternoon, she said. 2 in the afternoon. Why then? Claire's lips curved into something that was not quite a smile. Every Friday, if he has had a good week, Garrett opens a bottle of champagne in his office. Dom Perignon. It is his victory ritual. He did it when Morrison Holdings closed its first major deal. He did it when they hit the $100 million mark. He does it whenever he feels like he has won. Patricia nodded. And will he be alone? No. Claire let the word hang in the air. That is the point. Understanding dawned on Patricia's face. You want to serve him while he is with his mistress. I want the courier to walk into his office while he is celebrating with the woman he chose over me. I want him to open the envelope and see his entire world crumbling while she watches. I want her to see the man she thought was going to leave his wife for her, realize that he has lost everything. Patricia was quiet for a long moment. That is cold, she finally said. "I learned from the best." Patricia reached across the desk and squeezed Claire's hand. "Then let us make sure it happens exactly that way." Claire called Margaret that evening. "I need to know his schedule for this Friday. He has a private meeting blocked from 1 in the afternoon to 4 in the afternoon." Margaret's voice was careful, controlled. No calls, no interruptions. And Ms. Cole's calendar shows the same block. Claire closed her eyes, seeing it play out in her mind. The corner office on the 45th floor, the champagne, the leather couch, the two of them celebrating another week of getting away with it. "One more thing," Margaret said. "I take my lunch break at 2 in the afternoon. The relief receptionist, Tommy, is new. He is not very good at following protocol. He tends to let anyone up if they look important enough." "Thank you, Margaret. Just make sure those babies know what their mother did for them." The next 2 days passed in a blur of preparation. Patricia filed the new divorce papers with the court. The forensic accounting firm prepared the emergency freeze petition. Copies of the evidence were packaged and addressed to every member of the Morrison Holdings board. A courier was hired. Not just any courier, but a former process server with 20 years of experience. A man who knew how to get past gatekeepers, how to confirm identity, how to make absolutely certain that papers were served properly and could not be challenged later. Everything was ready. Thursday evening, Claire allowed herself to feel hope for the first time in months. She sat in Patricia's office, going over the final details one more time. "We are going to win," she said. "It is finally going to be over." Patricia looked at her with something like concern. "We are close. But Claire, in my experience, men like Garrett always have one more move. Do not celebrate until it is done." Claire nodded, but inside she felt lighter than she had in years. She started to plan her future. An apartment in Brooklyn, a quiet life, her children, everything was going to be different. That night, the doorbell rang. Claire opened it, expecting no one, and found herself face to face with the last person she ever expected to see. Tiffany Cole stood in the hallway, mascara running down her cheeks, her expensive clothes disheveled, her carefully maintained composure completely shattered. "Mrs. Morrison," she said, "please, I need to talk to you." Claire should have slammed the door in her face. Every instinct, every wounded part of her heart, every ounce of the betrayal she had felt for the past 6 months screamed at her to shut this woman out, to refuse her entry, to deny her the satisfaction of seeing Claire's face, of standing in Claire's home, of existing in Claire's presence. But something stopped her. Maybe it was the way Tiffany was trembling. Maybe it was the genuine terror in her eyes. Maybe it was the fact that Claire had spent 7 years being dismissed and ignored, and she was not willing to do the same to someone else, even someone who had hurt her this badly. Or maybe it was the realization that Tiffany Cole was not the villain in this story. Garrett was. "Come in," Claire said, stepping aside. Tiffany entered the penthouse with the uncertain steps of someone who knew they did not belong there. She looked around at the $28 million worth of real estate that Claire had called home, and something flickered across her face. Regret, maybe, or shame. "Why are you here?" Claire asked, not bothering to offer a seat. Tiffany wrapped her arms around herself, a self-protective gesture that made her look younger than her 28 years. "He is going to destroy you." The words came out in a rush, tumbling over each other. "And then he is going to destroy me." Claire studied her, the carefully highlighted hair, the designer clothes, the manicured nails that were now chipped and bitten. The facade of the confident, ambitious marketing director was crumbling, revealing someone far more fragile underneath. "Sit down," Claire said, gesturing to the couch. Tiffany sat, perching on the edge, as if she expected to be thrown out at any moment. "I thought he loved me," Her voice was barely above a whisper. "He told me your marriage was over, that you stayed together for appearances, that you were cold and distant, and you did not understand him." Claire lowered herself into the chair across from Tiffany, her hands resting on her pregnant belly. "And you believed him. I wanted to believe him." Tiffany's laugh was bitter, broken. "I was stupid. I was so stupid." "What changed?" Tiffany looked up, her eyes red and swollen. "Last night he told me about his plan. After you give birth, he is having you declared unfit, full custody of the children. He has doctors lined up, a psychiatric facility chosen, everything arranged." Claire nodded. She already knew this. "And then he said he was done with me too." Claire went very still. "What?" "He said I was becoming complicated." Tiffany's voice cracked. "He said the relationship had run its course. He offered me 6 months severance, to resign quietly and sign a non-disclosure agreement. And if you do not take it, then he said he would make sure I never work in this industry again. He said he would tell people I was obsessed with him, that I stalked him, that I made up the affair to get attention." Claire watched the other woman crumble, saw the moment when Tiffany finally understood the truth that Claire had learned 6 months ago. "He was never going to leave you for me," Tiffany whispered. "I was just entertainment, a distraction, something to pass the time while he planned how to take everything from both of us." Silence stretched between them. "What do you want?" Claire finally asked. "I want out." Tiffany's voice firmed slightly. "I want to start over. I do not want to be part of this anymore." "Then leave." The words came out harder than Claire intended. "Tonight, go back to wherever you came from. Do not sign his agreement. Do not take his money. Just disappear. But the things I know." Tiffany leaned forward, desperate. "I could help you. I could testify about everything I have seen, everything he told me. I do not need your help. Mrs. Morrison, please. I know I do not deserve anything from you. But I could be useful. I could tell the court about his plans, his lies, all of it." Claire stood, moving to stand by the window, looking out at the Manhattan skyline that would soon stop being her prison. "I do not want you at my trial," she said quietly. "I do not want the woman who slept with my husband in my house, in my bed, sitting in a witness stand describing the details of their affair. I do not want that to be all part of my daughter's history." She turned to face Tiffany. "This is the only mercy I have in me, Tiffany. Take it and go. Do not make me regret it." Tiffany stared at her for a long moment, some complex emotion moving across her face. Then she stood, gathering her purse, moving toward the door. "For what it is worth," she said quietly. "I am sorry. I know it does not mean anything." "You are right," Claire said. "It does not." Tiffany left without another word. Claire stood alone in the penthouse, her hands pressed against the window glass, watching the city lights spread out beneath her like scattered diamonds. Tomorrow, she thought, tomorrow everything changes. She pressed her hands against her belly, feeling her daughters move. 2 more days, she whispered to them. "Just hold on. 2 more days." Friday morning dawned gray and cold, the kind of early March day that could not decide if it wanted to be winter or spring. Claire woke before the sun, before Garrett, before the city began its daily chaos. She lay in bed for a long moment, feeling the baby's kick, thinking about everything that was about to happen. 7 years ago, she had walked down an aisle in a white dress, believing she was beginning the rest of her life. Today, she was ending it. She showered, dressed carefully, not in anything expensive or dramatic. A simple black dress that fit well over her pregnant belly. Low heels, minimal jewelry. She wanted to look like exactly what she was, a woman with nothing left to prove. Garrett was already gone by the time she emerged from the bedroom. He had meetings all morning, important things to do, a business empire to run. He had no idea it was all about to collapse. Claire called Patricia at 9 in the morning. "Everything is in place," Patricia said. "The courier will arrive at Morrison Holdings at exactly 2:15. The court order will execute at 2:10. By the time he opens the envelope, his accounts will already be frozen. And the board? They have been sent the evidence package by secure courier. It arrives at 2:30. They will be reading about his fraud while he is still trying to figure out what hit him." "What about the press? I have a contact at the Wall Street Journal. She has been briefed on the basics. She will call his office for comment at 3 in the afternoon." Claire closed her eyes, seeing it all unfold in her mind. "I am going to the St. Regis," she said. "I have booked a suite there. I want to be somewhere neutral while everything happens." "I will meet you there at 3, Patricia said. "By then, we should know how the board is responding. Thank you, Patricia, for everything. Do not thank me yet." Patricia's voice was warm but cautious. "Thank me when it is over." Claire left the penthouse at 11:30. She walked through the lobby without looking back, past the doorman who had watched her come and go for 7 years, past the security desk where the guards had learned her name and her schedule and her habits. She wondered if she would ever walk through that lobby again. She hailed a cab, gave the driver the address of the St. Regis, and watched Manhattan slide past the windows as she rode toward the moment that would change everything. The suite at the St. Regis was modest by her usual standards. 1 bedroom, a living area, a view of the city that was pleasant but not spectacular. It was exactly what she needed: a neutral space, a clean slate. Claire ordered tea and settled into a chair by the window. Then she watched the clock. At 1 in the afternoon, Garrett Morrison was in his corner office on the 45th floor of the Morrison Holdings building, reviewing quarterly projections with his chief financial officer. At 1:15, he dismissed his CFO and buzzed his assistant. "Margaret, clear my schedule for the rest of the afternoon. I have a private meeting." "Of course, Mr. Morrison." At 1:30, Tiffany Cole stepped off the elevator on the 45th floor. She had decided not to take Claire's advice. She had decided to stay, to try to salvage things, to make Garrett see that she was worth keeping. She walked past Margaret's desk without making eye contact. At 1:45, Margaret Hoffman received a text message from Claire Morrison. "It is time." Margaret stood, gathered her purse, and announced that she was leaving for her lunch break. At 1:50, a young man named Tommy took over the reception desk. He had been with the company for 3 months. He was eager to please and not particularly good at following rules. At 2 in the afternoon, Garrett Morrison opened a bottle of Dom Perignon. He poured 2 glasses, handed one to Tiffany, and raised his own in a toast. "To another successful quarter," he said. "To us?" Tiffany replied, clinking her glass against his. She had not told him about her visit to Claire's penthouse. She had not mentioned Claire's offer of mercy. She had decided to stay and fight. She had no idea it was already too late. At 2:10, in a federal courthouse 3 miles away, a judge signed an emergency order. All accounts in the name of Garrett Michael Morrison were immediately subject to forensic freeze pending investigation into allegations of fraud and asset concealment. The order was transmitted electronically to every bank and financial institution where Garrett Morrison had accounts. By 2:11, he was, technically speaking, broke. He just did not know it yet. At 2:15, the elevator doors opened on the 45th floor of Morrison Holdings. A man in a gray suit stepped out, carrying a manila envelope with a red seal. Tommy looked up from his computer. "Can I help you?" "Legal documents for Garrett Morrison. Personal delivery required." Tommy hesitated. "He is in a meeting." The courier smiled, the practiced smile of someone who had talked his way past gatekeepers 1,000 times before. "It is regarding the Henderson acquisition." Very time-sensitive. Tommy's eyes widened. He had heard about the Henderson deal. Everyone in the office had. It was supposed to be the biggest acquisition in Morrison Holdings history. "Go ahead," Tommy said. "Corner office." The courier walked down the hallway, his footsteps silent on the plush carpet. He stopped outside the corner office. Through the glass wall, he could see Garrett Morrison standing by the window, champagne flute in hand. A blonde woman was draped across the leather couch, her shoes kicked off, laughing at something he had said. The courier knocked. Garrett's voice came through the door, annoyed. "I said no interruptions." The courier opened the door anyway. "Garrett Morrison?" Garrett turned, his expression shifting from annoyance to curiosity as he noticed the envelope. "Who are you?" "Legal correspondence, sir. Personal delivery." The courier handed over the envelope. Garrett took it, his posture relaxing, as he assumed it was related to the Henderson deal. About time. He tore open the envelope. The first page stopped him cold. Petition for dissolution of marriage. Petitioner: Claire Elizabeth Morrison. Respondent: Garrett Michael Morrison. Grounds: adultery, financial fraud, intentional infliction of emotional distress. Garrett flipped to the next page. And the next. Photos of him and Tiffany at 3 different hotels. The original email chain discussing how to steal Claire's inheritance. Bank records showing offshore accounts he thought no one knew about. His hands began to shake. "Garrett?" Tiffany sat up on the couch, her smile fading. "What is it?" He did not answer. He was reading the final page. Pursuant to court. Order: all accounts in the name of Garrett Michael Morrison have been subject to forensic freeze, effective 2:10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Garrett grabbed his phone, opened his banking app. Account balance: frozen pending investigation. He tried the offshore accounts. Frozen, credit cards, declined. The corporate expense account, frozen. "This is not possible," he whispered. "This is not." The courier cleared his throat. "You have been served, Mr. Morrison. Have a nice day." He turned and walked out, closing the door behind him with a soft click. Tiffany was on her feet now, her face pale. "Garrett, you are scaring me. What is happening?" Garrett finally looked at her. Really looked at her. Perhaps for the first time. "Get out." "What? Get out." Tiffany scrambled for her shoes, her purse, her dignity. She fled the office without looking back. Garrett stood alone in the corner office he had worked 20 years to earn, holding papers that represented the complete destruction of everything he had built. His phone rang. He answered it without thinking, desperate for something, anything that made sense. "Who is this?" "Hello, Garrett." Claire's voice came through the speaker, calm and measured, and absolutely lethal. "I hope you enjoyed the champagne. I know how much you love your Friday ritual." "Claire." Garrett's voice cracked. "Listen to me. Whatever you think you know." "I know everything, Garrett. The inheritance you stole, the affair, the Hamptons house, the offshore accounts, the plan to have me committed. I can explain." "No, you cannot. You have had 7 years to explain. Now it is my turn to talk." There was a pause. When Claire spoke again, her voice was steel. "Your board is receiving a package right now. By the end of the day, they will vote to remove you as CEO. By the end of the week, the IRS will open an investigation. By the end of the month, you will be lucky if you have a cardboard box to sleep in. Claire, please think about our children." "I am thinking about our children. That is why I am doing this. So they never have to grow up watching their mother be a prisoner. So they never learn that marriage means ownership. So they never become you." Garrett was silent. For the first time in his life, he had no response. "Goodbye, Garrett. My lawyer will be in touch. Do not call this number again." She hung up. Garrett Morrison stood in his corner office, the phone pressed against his ear, listening to dead air. Somewhere far away, in a quiet suite at the St. Regis, Claire Morrison set down her phone and pressed her hands against her belly. "It is done," she whispered to her daughters. "Your mother fought for you." The board of Morrison Holdings convened an emergency meeting at 4 in the afternoon. They met in Claire's suite at the St. Regis, not by choice, but by necessity. They had all received the evidence packages. They all understood what they contained, and they all knew that they had approximately 48 hours to act before they became personally liable for harboring a CEO who had committed fraud. Elias Thornton, the 68-year-old chairman of the board, spoke first. "Mrs. Morrison," he said, his voice heavy with the weight of a situation he had never anticipated, "we find ourselves in an unprecedented position." Claire sat across from the assembled board members, her hands folded in her lap, her expression calm. "You find yourself complicit in harboring a CEO who committed financial fraud. Let us not dress it up." "We had no knowledge," Thornton protested. "That is exactly the problem. You did not know because you did not want to know. He made you money, so you did not ask questions." She let the words hang in the air. "Here is what is going to happen. You will vote to remove Garrett Morrison as CEO, effective immediately. You will cooperate fully with any investigation, and you will begin the process of liquidating his shares to repay the funds he embezzled, including my inheritance." "And if we refuse?" one of the board members asked. "Then I will make sure the Wall Street Journal gets the full story. Not just Garrett's fraud, your negligent oversight. Morrison Holdings will be worthless by Monday morning." Silence filled the room. "All in favor of removing Garrett Morrison as CEO?" Thornton finally asked. Every hand went up. The following week was a whirlwind. Monday morning, Garrett Morrison was officially terminated as CEO of Morrison Holdings. The announcement made the front page of every financial publication in the country. Tuesday, the IRS announced they were opening an investigation into allegations of tax evasion and securities violations. Wednesday, federal agents arrived at the office of Garrett's personal attorney to serve additional subpoenas. Thursday, Garrett Morrison was taken into custody. The photographs went viral within hours. Garrett Morrison, once one of the most powerful men in New York real estate, walking out of his lawyer's office in handcuffs, surrounded by federal agents. The charges were extensive: wire fraud, tax evasion, securities violations, money laundering. The man who had controlled $200 million could not make bail. All his assets were frozen. He spent 3 nights in federal holding before his sister managed to scrape together enough money from extended family members to secure his release pending trial. By then, it did not matter. His reputation was destroyed. His company was under investigation. His wife had divorced him. He had lost everything. 2 days after Garrett's arrest, Claire went into labor. She delivered twin girls at New York Presbyterian Hospital. Her mother Eleanor was there, holding her hand through every contraction. Patricia was there, standing guard at the door to ensure no one from Garrett's side could interfere. Margaret Hoffman sent flowers with a note. "Welcome to the world, little ones. Your mother is the bravest woman I have ever known." Claire held her daughters for the first time, one in each arm, feeling their tiny bodies warm against her chest. "Have you decided on names?" the nurse asked. Claire looked at them. "Perfect. Tiny. New. Elizabeth," she said, "after my grandmother. And Hope." The trial of Garrett Morrison began 6 months later. It dominated financial news for weeks. The evidence was overwhelming. Margaret's testimony was devastating. Documents that could not be disputed, emails that proved premeditation, bank records that showed years of fraud. Garrett's defense was predictable. He claimed Claire had manipulated him, that she was always after his money, that the affair was her fault because she was emotionally unavailable. The jury did not believe him. Guilty on all counts. 12 years in federal prison. Before sentencing, Claire was given the opportunity to make a victim impact statement. She stood in the courtroom, facing the man she had married, the man she had trusted, the man who had tried to destroy her. "Your Honor," she said, "I am not here for revenge. I am here for the truth." She turned to look at Garrett. "I loved you. When we got married, I believed we would build a life together. I believed partnership meant something to you. But you never saw me as a partner. You saw me as an asset, something to acquire and control. My inheritance was not a gift from my father. To you, it was just capital. My love was not precious. It was just leverage. You spent 7 years making me feel small, crazy, worthless. You almost convinced me that I was nothing without you." She paused. Her voice strengthened. "But you made one mistake. You underestimated me. You thought because I was quiet, I was weak. You thought because I was kind, I was stupid. You thought because I trusted you, I would never fight back. You were wrong." She turned back to the judge. "I do not wish him suffering. I just wish him gone from my life and my daughter's lives. Whatever sentence you give him, I hope he uses the time to become someone worthy of the children he will never raise." She sat down. Garrett stared at her across the courtroom. For just a moment, something flickered in his eyes, not anger, not hatred, regret. The divorce was finalized the same week as the sentencing. Claire received her original $12 million inheritance, plus interest. She received 40% of Morrison Holdings, which she later sold for $78 million. She received the Park Avenue penthouse, which she immediately put on the market. She received full custody of Elizabeth and Hope, with Garrett granted supervised visitation rights if and when he was released, assuming the girls chose to see him. Garrett retained nothing. Tiffany Cole resigned from Morrison Holdings quietly, without fanfare. She moved back to Ohio, where she had grown up, and started over. She was never mentioned in the press coverage of the trial. Margaret Hoffman retired with her full pension, plus the whistleblower compensation she had earned for reporting financial crimes. She spent her days with her husband and grandchildren. Finally able to sleep at night, Patricia Wells added Claire's case to her portfolio of victories against powerful men who thought the rules did not apply to them. Jerome Washington continued his work, helping other women find the truth about the men they had trusted. Eleanor Hartwell was vindicated. The cloud over her reputation lifted when it became clear that the anonymous concerns about the Hartwell Foundation had been manufactured by Garrett as retaliation. The board issued a formal apology and asked her to return to her position. She declined. "I have spent my whole life on that board," she told Claire. "It is time for something new." She moved to New York to be closer to her grandchildren. 1 year after the trial, Claire Morrison lived in a brownstone in Brooklyn Heights, not a penthouse, a home. The twins were walking now, toddling around a living room filled with family photographs and books and toys. Elizabeth was the adventurous one, always trying to climb things she should not climb. Hope was quieter, more observant, content to watch her sister's chaos from a safe distance. Eleanor visited every Sunday for brunch. They had developed a new relationship, one built on mutual respect rather than the polite distance that had characterized Claire's childhood. Claire had started a foundation, the Morrison Trust for Financial Abuse Survivors. She named it after herself, reclaiming the name that Garrett had made her ashamed of. In its first year, the foundation had helped over 2,000 women escape financially abusive marriages. It was a quiet life, a peaceful life, exactly what Claire had dreamed of during those dark months when she thought she might lose everything. But there was one final piece of unfinished business. The letter arrived on a Thursday afternoon. Mr. Morrison requests a visitation before his transfer to the long-term facility. He wishes to see his daughters. Claire read it twice, then set it aside. She spent 3 days thinking about it. Part of her wanted to refuse. She had every right to refuse. Garrett had tried to have her committed. He had tried to take her children. He had tried to destroy everything she loved. But she remembered what she had told the court. She did not want revenge. She wanted freedom. And freedom meant not being controlled by hate. The federal visitation room was exactly as depressing as Claire had imagined. Gray walls, harsh lighting, the smell of industrial cleaning products, and hopelessness. She sat at a metal table, waiting. When Garrett walked in, she barely recognized him. He had aged a decade in the past year. His hair had gone gray. His expensive tailored suits had been replaced by a shapeless prison uniform. The arrogance that had defined him for as long as she had known him was gone, replaced by something quieter, something broken. "Thank you for coming," he said as he sat across from her. "I did not bring the girls. I know. I did not expect you to. I just wanted to see you." "Why?" He was quiet for a long moment, his hands folded on the metal table between them. "I have had a lot of time to think," he finally said. "About who I was, what I did. I keep trying to find excuses. My childhood, the pressure, the money, but there are not any excuses. I was just cruel, and you did not deserve it." Claire did not respond. "I am not asking for forgiveness," he continued. "I know I do not deserve it. I just wanted you to know that I know. I know what I destroyed." Claire studied him for a moment. Then she asked the question that had been forming in her mind for years. "Do you remember our wedding day?" Garrett looked surprised. "Yes. You wrote your own vows? You said you promised to be my shelter in every storm. Do you remember that?" "Yes." Claire leaned forward slightly. "You became the storm, Garrett. You became the thing I needed shelter from." She stood. "I hope the next 12 years give you time to become the man you pretended to be, because someday, maybe, our daughters will want to know their father. And I want them to meet someone worth knowing, not the man who hurt their mother." She turned toward the door. "Claire." She stopped, but did not turn around. "The man you married," Garrett said, his voice cracking. "The one who wrote those vows. He was real. He just got lost somewhere along the way." Claire stood very still for a moment. Then she spoke, her voice steady. "Then find him. You have 12 years. She walked out of the visitation room, through the security checkpoints, past the guards and the cameras, and the heavy metal doors. She walked out into the sunlight. Eleanor was waiting by the car, just as she had promised. In the back seat, Elizabeth and Hope were sleeping in their car seats, exhausted from the drive. "How was it?" Eleanor asked. Claire took a deep breath of fresh air. "Necessary. Are you okay?" Claire looked at her mother, at her sleeping daughters, at the blue sky stretching endlessly above them. "I am free, Mom. For the first time in 7 years, I am completely free." She got in the car. Eleanor drove. Claire sat in the passenger seat, occasionally glancing in the rearview mirror at the prison growing smaller behind them. Then she turned around and faced forward. The road ahead was long. The future was uncertain. There would be challenges she could not predict, obstacles she would have to overcome, moments when she would wonder if she had made the right choices. But her daughters were safe. Her life was her own, and she had learned something important during the darkest period of her existence. She had learned that she was stronger than she knew, that kindness did not equal weakness, that trusting someone did not make you foolish, and fighting back did not make you cruel. She had learned that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is refuse to be destroyed. Claire smiled as they drove away from the prison, not a smile of revenge, not a smile of triumph, a smile of peace. In the years that followed, Claire Morrison would go on to help thousands of women escape the same kind of trap she had almost died in. Her foundation would have become one of the leading organizations fighting financial abuse, and her story would inspire countless others to find the courage to fight back. Elizabeth and Hope grew up in that brownstone in Brooklyn Heights, surrounded by love and books and family photographs. When they were old enough to ask questions, Claire told them the truth, all of it. She wanted them to understand that their mother had been knocked down and had gotten back up. She wanted them to know that strength was not about never falling. It was about refusing to stay down. Garrett Morrison served his full 12 years. He wrote letters to his daughters every month, and Claire saved them, unopened, for when the girls were old enough to decide for themselves whether they wanted to know their father. Some stories do not have happy endings. This one did, not because everything worked out perfectly, not because the bad guy got punished and the good guy won, but because a woman who had been told she was nothing discovered that she was everything. And she never forgot it again. This content was carefully researched, developed, and manually edited by our team to deliver meaningful stories with valuable life lessons. Every narrative is crafted to entertain, inspire, and empower our audience. We believe that great stories can change lives, and we are committed to bringing you content that matters. Thank you for being part of our community.